buddy, put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
That's right, across the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com, where you'll find the audio-only live stream and, of course, all the links to our social media and all the other sites where we simulcast the show every morning, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, etc. And also broadcasting live across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or translator, The Michael Dukes Show. Continuing this week as we go with our series of discussions with candidates. We're going to drive into that here in just a few minutes, starting at in the second segment here, about 10, 12 minutes. We're going to jump into it and start discussing things with candidates. Today on the program, we're going to have an interesting discussion with Democratic candidate Cliff Groh, who is going to be joining us and talking with us about his candidacy for House District 18, which is the district currently held by David Nelson. That's the old Gabrielle Ledoux district. It's kind of in the eastern side of Anchorage. That's going to be in hour one and should be an interesting discussion. Groh, a Democrat, is going to, is probably going to have issues and philosophies that we disagree with. But what I like, of course, as we've seen in our interviews with Les Garrett and others, is that there are some interesting things that we may agree with and some other things, obviously, that we don't. But we're going to find where that common ground is and see what we can build on from there. In hour two, we're going to be heading up into the Wasilla area and the Mat-Su and talking to Jessica Wright, who is a Republican candidate for State House in District 28. And we'll be getting her take. So it should be I'm expecting it to be kind of a morning of opposites, which should be an interesting an interesting comparative by the time everything is all said and done. So that's kind of where we're going today. Before we jump into it with a guest, we do have a couple headlines that I want to hit on, excuse me, and talk about. Plus a reminder that on tomorrow's program, we're going to be joined by Rosalind Casey and Stephen Wright, which will make for some more interesting discussions. And then on Friday, of course, for Firearms Friday, we're going to be talking with Zach Weissmuller, who is a correspondent and a editor for Reason Magazine at reason.com. He's got an interesting piece that he put up here about a week ago, talking about the differences and the role in media coverage of some of the more violent active shooter events that we've seen across the country. And we will get his take on how those things have helped or hurt the situation. Zach Weissmuller will be joining us on Friday for Firearms Friday. So it's good stuff. And then, of course, into next week, we're already looking at Russell Wyatt, Josh Church, who's with the Convention Yes Committee, will be joining us. I think John Bennett, Ginger Bryant, Ron Gillum, and, of course, the following Friday, we're either going to be talking with Dave Workman or Alan Gottlieb from the Second Amendment Foundation for Firearms Friday. So we're out there. It's busy. I mean, we're booking into the second week of October right now. It's hot and heavy. Oh yeah, let's dive into it and see what's going on. It's going to be amazing. Anthony just said in the chat room, common ground in 2022. I thought we were supposed to demonize and shun anyone not in lockstep with our far left or far right ideologies. Did I miss a memo? No, I mean, apparently that's a memo for the general public, but for this show, We like to see if we can find one thing we can agree on, even if it's a taste of the right beer. I don't know. Whatever it is, we're going to find something that we can agree on in the in the discussions today. All right, headlines. Who's got your headlines? That would be me. And there's some interesting ones out here today, and I'm waiting to see what's going to happen. First and foremost, I guess I'll start off with this one. The Constitutional Convention, obviously been a very interesting race or debate so far, a fight, so to speak. And the pro-con side are actually getting together for an official debate tomorrow night, 7 p.m. at the Wendy Williamson Auditorium in Anchorage. They're going to be debating both sides of the Constitutional Convention question. On the pro side of the convention are going to be Bob Byrd, who's chairman of the Alaska Independence Party and host of the talk show down on the peninsula on the radio stations down there, and also former Alaska Lieutenant Governor Lauren Lehman. That's the pro side. On the anti-convention side are Joel Hall, president of the Alaska AFL-CIO, and Matt Shuckero, who is the owner of Fathom Strategic Communications and former press secretary to Governor Mike Dunleavy. So that should be a very interesting debate. It's going to be live streamed, and you'll be able to see it on the Facebook and the YouTube page for the Alaska Public Media, which is facebook.com/Alaska Public. Doors open at 6:30. The debate kicks off at 7 this Thursday. And it should be an educational event for those of you who are going to be watching it. And we'll get some highlights, I'm sure, afterwards to discuss some of the pros and cons of the Constitutional Convention, which you know that I have. I was hesitant in the past to jump into with both feet, but have come to the conclusion that it is probably a necessary evil, simply because I don't believe that there's the political will to fix it otherwise. So, but we'll talk about that here later on. Interesting articles. Both ADN and Must Read Alaska have articles up about the reports that are coming out about Angela Rodell, the former head of the Alaska Permanent Fund. And it's interesting. Must Read Alaska was actually able to get a copy of the independent investigation. Now, there's two independent investigations, so we're going to have dueling investigations. One was instituted by the Legislative Audit and Budget Committee. They've spent $100,000 putting this together, and they're going to be going over that. They're going to be going over that report today. In, I guess, in their own defense, the Permanent Fund Board brought in an outside executive consultant or law firm rather for their own independent investigation. And Suzanne Downing at Must Read was actually able to get a copy of the report through a Freedom of Information Act. And so we're seeing some of this. Now, I don't know if the Legislative Budget and Audit Committee is going to hear about the trustees' independent investigation, or if they're only looking at their own. But some interesting things have come to light from the report put together by the trustees' investigators, including that problems between the board trustees and Angela Rodell went back to at least 2018. So this is not a new contentious issue or problem. The trustees had brought in an outside executive consultant to help Rodell repair her performance problem. That Rodell had shocked the trustees by sending out a press release describing the fund's strategy for continuing operations in the event of a government shutdown in June of 2022. This was due to a budget dispute between the governor and legislative leadership. And in that press release, she also inserted her opinion into the political dispute, which was apparently a big no-no for them. The independent investigation also showed that Governor Dunleavy did not get involved in the decisions or circumstances around Rodell's firing and was, in fact, surprised when he learned of it. And Rodell was described by trustees during the depositions as threatening political retribution against them. And in fact, she goes down and says, when when questioning Corey Feige, who was a commissioner of the Department of Natural Resources, and was asked to expand on her interaction during the deposition where Rodell was asked to resign and then fired when she refused. The question was, so what was Ms. Rodell's reaction or response to Chair Richards telling her what the board's direction was going to be? And she said, okay. And when he said, we're going to extend you the courtesy of being able to resign, she said, nope, and then proceeded to launch into one of the most vitriolic diatribes I've ever heard as a professional. Clearly, she was embarrassed and her feelings were hurt, but she immediately went to, I knew you were going to do this. You will all have to wear this decision. You don't know the political firestorm you've created for yourself, or something to that effect. And then good luck replacing me. Feige continued, I knew I had made the absolute right decision, and for someone not only to refuse the courtesy of being able to resign when you are a CEO, and then, turning around and having the eruption that she had, that communicates to me that it's an individual that doesn't believe that they have anything that they need to improve. They don't have any shortcomings. They're blind to what they need to improve in their own skill set. And this was a continuous theme throughout much of the questions and answers that came out, and discussions and interviews that were done by the independent investigators. There's a full, you can read the full report over at Must Read Alaska, and I'll drop the link in the chat room for those of you who may want to go read it on your own time and do all that kind of stuff. Anyway, it's interesting. So I do not know if they will read both reports, or if the Legislative Budget and Audit Committee will give the trustees the opportunity to bring forward their report. We'll have to see. We'll have to see what comes out of that. But I don't know if this was the the answers that they were expecting on all that as well. So we'll get into that as well. And then, interestingly enough, there was a new report that came out kind of out of the blue. An independent economic report released yesterday criticized the Alaska Industrial Development and Export Authority, claiming that ADIA's investment decisions were less investments and more politically driven gambles. Now, for those of you who don't remember, ADIA is the organization that's been given money, general fund money, and basically money that would have been destined for the corpus of the permanent fund, to spend on Alaska-based projects. And we have talked on this program several times about the danger of creating Alaska-based only investments with monies that should be destined for the permanent fund. Now, these are outside of the fund themselves, but the report does say that they would have been better spent in putting them in the permanent fund, as the report states that ADIA had about $300 million in public funds that they were given, and only earned an average of 3.8% in investments compared to the permanent fund's 9.4% rate of return. And we've talked about how dangerous it is. Although it is a nice idea, it would be, in an ideal world, it would be great if we could use permanent fund monies to invest in Alaska and yada, yada. But we know that would become the political football. That would become the political hot potato of favors being paid and everything else. And of course, who would suffer would be Alaskans, whose permanent fund dividend and other returns overall are based on how much money an investment makes. So this is an interesting discussion, and I have not read the full report yet because it just came out, but it was put together by the advocacy group Salmon State, and ADIA was not too pleased about it. The chair of ADIA said that they were a bit blindsided by it and would really have liked to have they really would like to have had more input and work with this Salmon State group directly. But I think it kind of, I'm sure Brad will want to talk about this next week, Brad Keithley, because this has been, again, part of our warning in including Alaska-based investments and requiring them, that you'll see here. Again, the return on those investments is very, very low, although there may be some trickle down as far as helping things inside the state. How political does it get? And in fact, this Salmon State organization calls them politically driven gambles, which I think is exactly what we were warning about before. Whoa. All right, I got to get out of here. We got more. Cliff Groh is in the wings, in the green room. I can see him right now. We're ready to jump into that. We're going to continue. The Michael Duke Show continues. Candidate interviews kick off in just a second. Don't go anywhere. Don't forget, you can always join us out on Facebook if you'd like at facebook.com/Michael Duke Show. Facebook.com/Michael Duke Show. We return with candidate Cliff Groh right after this.
What is that?
Common sense.
Regularly heard on American radio. Michael Duke Show. Radio.
Okay, we're in the break right now. Commercial break running. And so good morning to all of you. Good morning. Cliff Groh is waiting in the wings, and we're going to join him here in just a hot second. Let me see if there were... see if there's anything else that I wanted to. I thought that was a great comment from Anthony early on this morning. Sprinkling, it's a nice day, then rain, broken record. I mean, I know it's been so nice the last couple of days, and then just a little bit of rain, and you're like, oh, I can't take it anymore. All right. Good morning. Support Alaska ballot measure to decriminalize marijuana in 2014. Somebody done forgot to change their profile here on Facebook here when they commented on this here. Somebody said good morning, and their user profile is support the ballot measure to decriminalize marijuana in 2014. You may want to change your icon back there. Do you have a link to the con debate? I dropped that in the chat room as well. If the legislature paid $100,000 for an investigation, I guarantee it will read however they want it to, said Bill. It's interesting. I mean, it's going to be interesting to watch. That's for sure. Exactly what's coming on. Good morning. No kidding, says Herder. But some folks would not have some cushy political job decided. I think he's talking about the politicization of investments out of the permanent fund, which again, we've talked about as being dangerous. I mean, again, in an ideal world, it would be great if we could do Alaska only investments, but the purpose of the fund is to generate the maximum return. And Hammond also talked a little bit about, and I think Hickel as well, both talked about the dangers of focusing that money only in the state of Alaska. I mean, it sounds good on paper, but it becomes a real political football at some point. So anyway, okay, that's all well and good. We got through all the comments this morning in the chat room. So this is where I exhort you to invite other people to participate in the program. So please, if you haven't shared the broadcast this morning, might I suggest that you do that on any of your social medias. Doesn't matter where you're watching us, on Facebook or YouTube or Twitch, any of those, you can share those out to other people. And of course, I would love for you to like and follow the show page on Facebook, to subscribe and ring the bell on YouTube, and to follow on Twitch. There you go. It's all good. All right, let's get things set up here and get started. I've already had a conversation. Cliff Groh's been waiting in the wings since the beginning of the show, because we wanted to test everything this morning, and he's been kind enough to hang out with us in the background there, and he joins us this morning for our discussion. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Great, Michael, and thanks for having me on.
Well, appreciate you coming on and talking with us here. Let me fix your thing here. It's a candidate for District 18, right? Okay.
Correct.
Let me actually spell the word candidate right. There we go. All right. So, Cliff, we're about ready to jump back into this and to talk about it. And I appreciate you coming on. As I said earlier, we probably won't agree on a lot, but what I'm looking for always is that one thing that we can agree on. I love to find some kind of common ground.
I think we'll find a bunch, Michael, a surprisingly large amount.
Yeah, I mean, it's, again, as a libertarian, I always find myself agreeing with this and that from both sides, and then everybody hates you because you want to agree with somebody, and then it always kind of buggers up the conversation. So it should be a good conversation. So let's jump into it here. And I'm going to just mute you there. You're up on hold and ready to go, folks. We are about ready to jump back into it. So again, like and share. And follow and ring the bell and do all that kind of stuff. And let's get more people Not that I don't love talking to you guys all in the morning, but I see a lot of the same faces. It'd be nice if we could get some more people involved in the conversation and come on in and get a bigger base of people to, the answer to speech you don't agree with is more speech, and so that's what we're trying to do is bring more speech into the conversation. So let's do it here. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Like a chair, like a chair, like a chair. Let's do this thing. Here we go. All right, we're ready. We're jumping into it now to start our morning discussions. Joining us is candidate for District 18, Cliff Groh, who he's been around the state for, for a little while here. He's been around for quite a few years, lifelong Alaskan, and he is running for State House because he says he always has cared deeply about Alaska. We're going to get his full backstory here and more information from him right now as he joins us for our discussions with candidates as we continue on with that. Good morning, Cliff. How are you?
Great, Michael. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you coming on. It should be an interesting and fun discussion today. So, for folks who don't know who you are, give us a little bit of a background about you, who you are, where you came from, and let's get some details here.
Absolutely, Michael. Michael, I'm a lifelong Alaskan. I was born and raised in Anchorage and have lived in Anchorage most of my life and in Alaska all of my life. I'm a husband. I'm a proud husband of my wife, Teresa. I'm the proud father of my son, Kevin. I'm a former prosecutor. I've put criminals in prison all around the state, working as a prosecutor for the Alaska Department of Law. I have worked on Alaska's fiscal challenges, sort of the long run effects of the both the rise of oil money and then the long-term decline caused by the long-run fall in Alaska oil production. And I've worked in this area for more than 40 years. First, while working for the legislature, and then for the stint at the Alaska Department of Revenue as a special assistant commissioner, and then as a private citizen. And Michael, I helped create the permanent fund dividend. I don't think you can out-libertarian me in that sense. When I was in my 20s, as I said, I worked for the staff of the legislature, and I worked directly with Governor Jay Hammond and a number of legislators to help create the permanent fund dividend, both in drafting the legislation and helping to draft the legislation, and also helping to assemble a tripartisan coalition of three Republicans, Democrats, and libertarians. There were actual libertarians in the legislature back then, card-carrying members of the Libertarian Party. I am very concerned about our state's structural deficit, and I want to help fight particularly help fight violent crime around our state, and use my background as a prosecutor to do that. Crime in general is a problem, but it's particularly violent crime in terms of sexual assault, domestic violence, and child abuse, all crimes that I have prosecuted, that our state has shamefully high rates in leading the nation. I'm a champion and advocate of small business. I'm a former, I still am a lawyer who is a small businessman in that sense, although I'm mostly chasing voters now, and I don't have any clients right now. But I've been a small businessman. I have a small business council to advise me. We had a meeting earlier this week. As I said, an advocate and champion of small business. I'm formerly an honorary commander of JBER, the military base. And I'm running to represent House District 18, and I want to describe it a little bit more. It's a new district created by reapportionment that runs across North Anchorage, sometimes described as like Anchorage's headband. And it's best described as the neighborhood it includes, because it runs all the way from Cook Inlet to the landfill. This new district that I'm running in includes all of Government Hill, almost all of JBER, in parts of North Muldoon, downtown, and Fairview, with a relatively small slice of Mountain View. And that's the district that I'm running in to represent in the Alaska State House. And I'm co-creator of the permanent fund dividend, as I said, and I'm running to protect the permanent fund and grow the PFD. I want to constitutionalize the dividend to end the yearly dividend debacle and all that argument in fighting, get the politicians out of the way, and not have the annual arguments that freeze up the legislature and waste time and money over the level of the dividend. I want to capture revenue from out-of-state workers and people who and the individual incomes of that amount above $250,000 with an income tax like Alaska used to have between 1949 and 1980 that got repealed in the first wave of the oil boom, the big oil money. I want to bring in our fair share of oil revenues. I joined Senator Bill Wielechowski, who's endorsed me in a number of positions, but also in terms of getting our fair share of oil revenues. I think there's hundreds of millions of dollars the state of Alaska could generate in a year through a restructuring of our oil tax system that would help our state and raise revenues for schools, roads, public safety, and other important services. I also believe that we need to, I'm a big believer in fiscal responsibility. I fought for it for decades. I'm a believer we need to balance the budget, and with a comprehensive fiscal approach that would include a tighter constitutional spending cap. And those are the things that I'm running on and care about, and a little bit about me.
All right. Well, that's a big dump there. So let's jump into that and start talking about it. I mean, first and foremost, what, this is a question that I love to ask, what made you jump into the political? I mean, you've been behind the scenes, like you said, you were working in the, for the legislature as a staffer, law department, I mean, all that kind of stuff. But what made you jump out front and decide that now was the time to actually get into the political game directly as a candidate? Was there a single thing? Was it a combination of things? What was it?
Combinations of things came together. Number one, I have a great wife who supports my candidacy. That's not been true all my adult life in terms of wanting me to run. That's an important factor. Teresa is just terrific beyond belief, way better than I deserve. Additionally, I've been on the board of Alaska Common Ground, a nonprofit organization dedicated to bringing people together and finding common ground and finding consensus in Alaska on our major issues. And I was chair of that organization for 4 years. I worked hard then to try to help people understand our fiscal problems and the options for addressing them, and to help bring them together to find solutions. And then in 2018, Les Guerra announced very much toward the end, just before the filing deadline, that he was thinking of not running. I jumped in at the very end and ran in that district, and lost in the primary. Then my wife and I moved to Government Hill, which is part of the old former the district that I ran in. And then when the lines got announced last year, not only got I moved into it, but the lines had moved, such that I was now in a new district that ran across North Anchorage without a Democratic incumbent, and I decided to run. I've run very hard. I've knocked on more than 4,000 doors since January, when I started walking door to door. And I'm proud to announce, Michael, that I am the candidate, according to journalist Matt Buxton. I'm the candidate for the legislature in Alaska who has who has had the most individual contributors of any candidate for the Alaska State Legislature, House or Senate, in this cycle.
Right.
And I'm proud of that fact.
Knocking on doors does have an effect. I can tell you that for sure. You definitely.
And I've made a lot of phone calls and sent a lot of emails, Mr. Dukes. That's a fact too.
Right. Well, let's talk about your constituency, because this is something that I always find fascinating. Because when I ran for office back in Fairbanks back in the day, I always found it interesting to see what the constituents were talking about. What was the most important issue that, when you walked in and knocked on their door, what were they talking about? And so, you've mentioned a plethora of issues, and we have a bunch of issues that are facing us, whether it's the, inflation or the budget or public safety, the dividend. I mean, what is the number one issue that your constituents are really talking about?
I've never done a precise survey, but when you walk to more than 4,000 doors, as you correctly note, I've met a lot of people. the top 4 or 5, homelessness, crime, the budget, the dividend, and are the things people talk about, and jobs. And I talk about all those issues, and have plans to address them.
Okay. Well, I want to dive down into your stance on the permanent fund dividend, because you talk about, what we really need is supporting a dividend that we can afford. Now, for us here on the show, that's kind of an anathema statement because, we believe that we should follow the law. It's either statutory dividend or it's not. Either follow the law or change the law. Although you are more closely aligned with what I was see earlier in the legislature when Governor Mike Dunleavy and others came forward and said what we really need is a 50-50 POMV draw and payout. And that's similar to the plan that you have laid out here on your website, that you're looking for a sustainable POMV formula that prevents the government from overdrawing the permanent fund, and then also gives it and makes it a full 50-50 split and nothing more. Expand on that for us. I mean, is that, is that a hard lock thing for you? You think the statutory dividend is out the door? Should they change the law? What should we do here?
I agree with you. We need to change the law, right? And I helped create the statutory dividend, right? And the bill that I helped draft in 1982 that became the law that allowed for the payment of all these billions of dollars in permanent fund dividends in over the decades is something that I worked on very extensively back in 1982. The formula was slightly changed later in the 1980s, but the basics of it were put in place in that 1982 legislation. And you have to understand how things work in the sense of how they change over time when you have to face that directly. When the dividend bill was originally created, Alaska had enormous amounts of oil money coming in with the promise of a lot more coming in. And oil paid the bills. Oil revenues paid the bills for the state of Alaska for decades. And that's how we were able to have the Alaska state budget with conventional services for, as I said, things like roads, schools, public safety, public health, and have no broad-based taxes and very low taxes on citizens, the lowest in the United States. And third, have and pay out the dividends, permanent fund dividends, according to that formula. With the decline in the oil revenues made that possible. With oil revenues falling so dramatically, I know, Michael, you could easily point out they've gone up in the past 9 months or so because of the war in Ukraine. Obviously, they've fallen off their highs.
Right.
We're not back where we were in March
right.
or wherever.
Right.
We've fallen off dramatically, as you know, and we're well below $100 a barrel now. But the oil money party has ended. And the war in Ukraine is not going to last forever. Oil prices have already fallen. They're going to continue to fall. People like you and me have lived in Alaska a long time and watched the oil markets know that oil prices fluctuate and gyrate even. So we need to have a new fiscal system. We've gone part of the way to doing that. We need to go farther part of the way. And I'm your full plan candidate. I heard your interview with, Brad Keithley, and I'm your full plan candidate. And maybe, Michael, you're going to say, Cliff, you're too fair. You're too equitable. You can't do it. Or maybe even you're going to say, Michael, you're too brave. Cliff, you're too brave. I can handle it. I'm not afraid of that.
Right.
But I think that we should have reasonable services for the people of Alaska, the largest dividend the state of Alaska can afford, with an eye toward making it 50% of the PMV payout. And I have a plan to pay for it that involves higher taxes in the oil industry and a broad-based tax on non-residents and residents, individuals who make on that portion of their income that's over $250,000 a year. And I know some people like that, Michael. I fired my dentist when I found out that he lived in Utah and flew to Anchorage 34 weeks a year for 4 days a week. And made all his 100% of his income in Alaska. And dang it, Michael, the state of Utah taxes its income that made in Alaska. Remember, all his income's made in Alaska. Right. I just think that's wrong. Michael, you might say he's your role model. You might say, hey, Cliff, I want to protect that guy. And I say we need to have a reasonable fiscal structure and system that collects some of the money that some non-residents make in Alaska. And my proposal addresses that.
I think it's interesting, because again, as I was reading through your proposal here in the permanent fund, again, the similarities and the parallels with what had been proposed this last session by Governor Dunleavy were apparent. I mean, talking about, again, a POMB 50% draw, not overdrawing the permanent fund, some of the other things. But you just said something that piqued my interest when you said, with an eye towards getting it to be a 50% split for the people. Shouldn't that be predominant? I mean, shouldn't that be not an eye towards, like, we're going to work towards it, because we know how that works out. We say, well, what we really want is this, but what we're going to start with is this, and it never ends up being at the goal of a 50-50. And we've already seen, of course, the legislature wants a 75-25. They want all these other splits. Quickly here, I got less than a minute before the break, but give me your take on that. Shouldn't it just be a straight 50-50 split, and the government needs to figure out where the rest of the revenue comes from if that's what they want?
That's what I would like to do, and we need a comprehensive solution. And you mentioned the Fiscal Policy Working Group, a committee that I followed very closely and was in communication with in 2021 when they were doing their work. I think that's a good approach, but we need all the parts to fit together and not have fantasy schemes that we're going to have lotteries alone that pay for our budget, or that's the solution. And I'm your realistic, brave candidate. With a full plan. And that's my approach. And I know how to save the dividend because I helped create it. And that would be my proposal.
We're talking with Cliff Groh, Democratic candidate for House District 18. We're going to continue this discussion in just a moment. We'll get deeper into the budgets and other things as well. We'll continue right after this. The Michael Dukes Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio.
We're broadcasting live through a series of tubes,
Allowing all of these entities to provide streaming stuff going on the internet.
well, it's kind of hard to explain. Sorry. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, we're in the break right now. Cliff Groh is our guest, and I'll just be honest with you, Cliff. When you said that immediately made me cringe a little bit, and the hackles rise, because we hear that a lot. Our ideal is that we want, B, but we got to do A first, and we'll try and work our way to B. And the problem is that when people say, oh, well, I heard that they really want B over here. I really heard that they want this 50-50 split. And so we'll give them a little ground now because we know that's where they're working towards. And of course, then we never get to B, because once they have their hands in the cookie jar, once they have access to those funds, they don't want to give them up. So if it starts out at a 75-25, and the ideal is, of course, we want to work to a 50-50, we never end up getting there because there's always some other reason why they should use that money for something else, right? I mean, this is the whole problem with, for example, deferred maintenance. It's the same kind of thing. Oh, we could put that off one more year because we really need that money for Project X for now, and we'll get back to it later. And then the next thing you know, you're $250 million behind on deferred maintenance. I mean, that's a real problem.
I'm a big believer, by the way, to go to a subsidiary point, I'm a big believer in a bigger capital budget. And than we've had in recent years. We had a big one this year because of the blood money from Ukraine. And I think that we need a 50-50 makes sense to me, but it's got to be part of this overall package where we have additional revenues for our state, a tighter constitutional spending cap, and an understanding of, that we can't, and higher oil taxes, as I said, as part of those additional revenues, but an understanding that we can't just, rely on oil money alone to pay all the bills like we did for so many decades, for so long, for years.
Right. Well, go ahead.
And by the way, I'm also going to talk about that. I helped get a big oil tax bill passed as well.
Yeah. Well, we're going to talk about the oil taxation, and we're going to talk about the spending cap and some other things as well. Along with your position on the Constitutional Convention and other services, but I don't want to repeat ourselves too much, so I want to make sure we jump back into that on the radio. Somebody asked a question I thought was relevant here in the chat room. because you were talking about, the problems of the oil and the volatility of the prices and everything else. And Brian in the chat room asks, and Biden's energy policy, ask him about that contribution to the price of oil. What are your thoughts on the president's current plan with what's happened and, what's happened with American energy independence as well with these new policies? I mean, is this something you favor? Do you think that as an Alaskan, we have a uniquely different view? What's your take on it?
I favor more oil development in Alaska to the degree we can get it. I think Alaska's biggest issues with that are economic factors. And one oil company lobbyist told me recently that there's probably only going to be 2 more developments on the slope, right? Just because of the nature of it. And he hopes that his company could get his through. And then one other one that another company's doing, but those might be the only 2 major oil developments in Alaska because of economic factors. And I think that the biggest problem, and a lot of people do not recognize in Alaska, is we've lost more than 3/4 of our oil production, given that we used to have more than 2 million barrels of oil a day go through the pipeline in the late 1980s, and now it's well below 500,000 barrels a day, and some days close to 400,000 barrels a day. I know you've talked about that, Michael, but others in Alaska don't seem to always have absorbed that.
No, I mean, it's always frazzled me that, here we have this decline in oil revenue and decline in development. And a lot of it has to do with, federal mandates and federal ideas. We should be opening up all the available lands for resource development that we have. That's how the state of Alaska is going to continue to expand and grow. I mean, we're a resource-driven state. Should we also be taking a look at one of my pet peeves, this is my personal pet peeve, is mineral taxes, mineral and severance taxes. Shouldn't we be looking at those things as well? I mean, when we have a 3% net tax on mineral severance, that's a problem. Who's put together this plan where it's a 3% net tax? We know how sharp those pencils are for the accountants for those big boys. Shouldn't it just be a flat severance tax on the, for every ounce taken out of the ground?
We got to look at mining taxes and also recognize that that typically or traditionally hard rock mining does not have as much profit as oil does. The potential for profit. Although I think there will be more minerals mined in Alaska, especially with the green energy revolution and other factors. And I think that we are going to get more mining. That it's not oil development.
I think rare earth minerals and some of the other ones are definitely going to be the bigger pushes for that as we go through, and I think that's that's going to be the next frontier, so to speak, of what we need to be pushing is the rare earth and a lot of the other extractables that we have available to us. All right, Cliff, we'll hold the line for us for just a second. I got you on mute. We're going to be right back to you, folks. Like and share this show. Like and follow the show page if you would. Like to go out and take a look. I've got links up in the chat room right now to Cliff's issues page, which is it's pretty explanatory there. There's lots of good information. It's not just bullet points. And you might find something that you agree in there. Let me know. We're going to jump back into this. Here we go. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Share the show. Like this video. Let's do it. All right, we're continuing now. Cliff Groh is our guest, Democratic candidate for House District 18, which is in Anchorage. And we're talking with him about various issues around the state. During our last conversation right before we went to break, we were talking about the permanent fund. We were also talking about some taxation and some other things. Cliff, you've mentioned a couple times one of the things that you think we need is a spending cap, a constitutionalized spending cap. In your issues, you also say that the dividend itself should be constitutionalized at a 50-50 POMV draw type situation. But then you also say that you do not support a constitutional convention. Now, here's my question, because this is part of the problem. We've talked about it. The governor wanted to have a SGR 6 was all about making sure that you constitutionalize the PFD and putting a spending cap in and doing some of these other things. But it's pretty obvious, Cliff, that there's no political will to get that done on the legislature side. I mean, there's two ways to change: a constitutional convention or the legislature, really. Those are the two real ways to get change. So what's the hesitation on the constitutional convention? I guess first question is, do you think there's the political will to do it via the legislature? And if not, then why not a constitutional convention?
I think, yes, there is. And I have a record of putting together and helping to put together big deals. Both the deal that got the permanent fund dividend bill passed in 1982, which I've earlier described. I also, while working at the Alaska Department of Revenue, later helped put together and assemble the coalition, at that time a bipartisan coalition, because the Libertarians had left the legislature by then. But I helped assemble a bipartisan coalition for a major oil tax bill that passed, that raised $2 billion for our state. That's billion with a big B, Michael. And so I have a record of helping to put together big deals in the legislature on major issues to help our state and help the people of Alaska. So I'm optimistic, and that's just my approach, and I have the record to go along with that. And I think that with my background litigating constitutional issues, and been an advocate for a long time, and worked for the legislature and with the legislature, and that I can help do this and be a critical part of putting this together. And I support constitutional amendments. I support, as you know, constitutionalizing the permanent fund dividend. I support further protecting the permanent fund earnings. Right now, the legislature could get back in session, next month, or certainly in January, when it will obviously come back, and spend all the earnings, every penny of the earnings, in one spree. That would be a very bad outcome for our state, and something that I think that needs to be prevented by a constitutional amendment. I support change to the Constitution through what we would call regular order in the legislature, and I think that I can play a substantial role in doing that. I, on the other hand, do not support a constitutional convention. I'm a member, or donated to the organization Defend Our Constitution, and have participated early on in some of the meetings before I got too busy with my own campaign. I think that this now is not the right time to have a constitutional convention. I'm particularly concerned about the threats to privacy and to choice that would exist by doing that. I'm proud, as a lifelong Alaskan, I'm proud of our state's record, that our state decriminalized abortion and changed the abortion laws before the issuance of the Roe versus Wade decision. I think it'd be bad for our state to ban abortion and criminalize abortion and put women and doctors in prison. And I stand foursquare against that. And I think that there'll be a lot of pressures in the Constitutional Convention to do that. I think there's going to be pressures in the Constitutional Convention to wreck our system of public schools, which I would very much oppose. I'm a proud product of the Anchorage Public Schools, Inlet View, Central, West, and I would like other students now in school and in the future in Alaska to have the same good opportunities that I had in public school in Alaska.
So you're more concerned about the other things that could be changed, not necessarily that a constitutional convention couldn't address the issues of a spending cap at PFD, but you're concerned about access to abortion and other things that could be changed.
That I also think that we could lock ourselves into a system through the Constitutional Convention can come out with some sort of basic way that would, wreck funding for public schools, make it impossible to have good public safety in Alaska or good roads through some unrealistic changes.
But the citizens have to ratify all those things. I mean, don't you trust the citizens to be able to make those decisions for themselves if it's put in front of them?
I believe a better process would be to go through the regular order in the legislature right now. And I say, vote no on the Constitutional Convention, vote yes on Cliff Groh to bring your constitutional changes on the dividend, on protecting the permanent fund, and also on a tighter constitutional spending cap.
We're down to the last 4 minutes here, so I do want to get into the issue of education, because you've talked about that a couple times. Education in this state, we've poured ever-increasing amounts of money into education over the last 25 years. We still are at the bottom of the barrel scholastic in achievement. We still have 1 in 4 students don't even graduate. Most of the students going into college have to take remedial math. I mean, there's a whole slew of problems here. Is the answer just more money? Do we have to fundamentally change the way we do schooling? And what are some of the solutions that you think that would make K-12 better? Quickly here.
I, I, I I think that we need to listen to the best evidence, follow the best evidence, follow the best practices, be mindful of what we're learning on the ground. I also think that we can't do that on the cheap. And I think that one of the problems we have in education in Alaska today is teacher turnover. And I am a big believer and supporter of both for teachers and for other public employees bringing back a defined benefit system like the one that I had and stumbled into just with the very end of it in Alaska myself. And I think that we can't cheap out an education, an important constitutional obligation, an important social and moral obligation for the people of Alaska. I have both guest lectured in a number of classes in Anchorage as recently as this year. Beginning of this year, I did it. And I also have big believer in education. I've also created a course at the University of Alaska, which I taught repeatedly, called Navigating Alaska's Fiscal and Economic Challenges. So I am the candidate to study this. I'm a big believer in education, and I recognize that we've got to have the appropriate resources to handle that and support our teachers to give the best possible educations to our students that we can.
I guess just one follow-up question on that, because again, defined benefits programs, we've seen them across the country. They've had to be bailed out. They've had, many municipalities and communities have stopped them. Most private industries have stopped them because again, Delta and GM and several had to be bailed out. Defined benefits program put this state upside down in liability to the tune of $12 billion. What about that as a danger for bringing back defined benefits?
I wrote a paper on that for the University of Alaska. On the unfunded liabilities of PERS and TERS, and they're a lot lower now than they were when that paper was published only a few years ago. I've written a very long paper about that topic. I see the new proposals as not creating those problems. I think that there's a way to bring back defined benefit system to teachers and other public employees in Alaska that would have great benefits to the public in reducing teacher turnover and public employee turnover. And also would not have the bad financial effects that you discussed.
All right, last minute here, Cliff. I want to give you the floor. Your elevator pitch, why people should vote for Cliff Groh. Where do they find you? Any events? Go. It's all you.
CliffGrohForAlaska.com, a number 4, Cliff Groh, number 4, Alaska.com. You can look up my positions. I do have a long website with a lot of detailed policy proposals. You could also, if you wish, donate to my campaign, and that would be fine with me too. I am your experienced, hardworking, highly motivated candidate. I'm your common sense candidate who's seeking common ground, and I'm a Democrat who was raised by prominent Republicans in Alaska. I have worked with everybody throughout my life and throughout my public career in Alaska, and I am willing and want to go to Juneau, roll up my sleeves, and help save our state. And I would be proud to have your support.
Cliff Groh, thank you so much for coming on board. Hold the line for a second. Folks, we're out of time. Jessica Wright up next, The Michael Duke Show. All right, Cliff, I want to give you one final bite at the apple. I like to do that just the last couple minutes that are not up against the clock there and against the timer. So your final thoughts here. Again, this is not your friendly audience that, is probably as receptive as they could be to your points. I think you and I agree on a couple things. I think, there's probably a whole slew of things that we disagree with, but I want to give you the last bite here in case there was something we didn't hit on or some other kind of pitch that you want to make here at the very end. I wanted to give you the floor.
I'm your lifelong Alaskan who helped create the dividend and wants to save it and knows how to save it. I have realistic and detailed proposals to help put our state on a right course for the long run. I am not your candidate if you're interested in making a bunch of money in the short run and leaving Alaska in the next 2 years. If that's your approach, you can find other candidates that would be more helpful for you. I want to further protect our permanent fund, constitutionalize the permanent fund dividend, and save it for the long run. I want to provide additional revenues for our schools, our public safety, and our roads. I want to balance the budget with a tighter spending cap. And I want to do it by bringing people together through my hard work and experience and detailed knowledge of the issues.
One final question, because I didn't get a chance to ask this earlier. It always seems that the 45 minutes goes so quickly, but I often ask the candidates, where we're at the state budget right now. Do you think it's too small? Do you think it's too big? Do you think it's just right? Where do you stand as the amount of money we're spending in the government right now on a per capita basis? Where do you think we stand?
I think that there was some. I think that we need to maybe go back to where we were about a year or two ago before the oil money came in, and then pay for it, right? Pay for it and not be unbalanced. We have a sea of red coming up, so I think the budget might have gotten a little too high, got too high in the last year with the blood money from the Ukraine war. But that we're not going to have that anymore. But without that, we're facing big deficits, and we need to have a reasonable budget that is paid for, and that's the proposals that I offer.
Blood money, Cliff? Really? I mean, it's market forces. I mean, I know it's a war, but is it really blood money? I mean, come on, that seems a little hyperbolic.
A lot of people have died,
Sure.
to help force up the market. It's realistic in terms of what's actually happened, and it's not going to keep up, right?
Well, no, I agree with that. I was just saying the classification as blood money. I mean, those are market forces. We had it's out of our hands, but I thought the blood money classification was a little hyperbolic, there. But anyway, good conversation. I appreciate you coming on board, and thanks for bringing your issues forward. And we appreciate you being part of it today. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks. Appreciate it, Michael. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Cliff Groh here, our guest for hour one of the program. In the green room, I see that Jessica Wright has joined us, and we're going to be getting to her here in just a second. In fact, we probably should bring her on just to test her audio to make sure everything is up and running here before we get started. And then I will get to some of the comments here in the chat room. Whoops, let's go over here, Jessica, and we'll see if we can test everything. I see your microphone is muted, Jessica, so if you want to unmute your microphone, and then we'll see if we can hear you here this morning as we get ready to go on. Good morning. How are you? Can you hear me, Jessica?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Good. All right. So we'll be jumping on with you here in just a few moments, and if you're ready to go, we'll kick things off here in just a second. Okay.
Okay.
All right. You can leave your microphone unmuted, and I will be back to you here in just a moment. All right. Let me get into the comments here in the chat room. I mean, I knew this was not going to be a popular interview with Cliff, just simply because we mostly disagree on most of the policies. Some of you guys, though, just go way over the top here. Pedophiles and adrenochrome and all the different other kinds of craziness that we're talking about here. I think, again, Susie Think I says right here, she goes, this guy sounds like Bert Stedman, follow the damn law. Yes, I agree. Brian asking about the energy policy. Let's see. Ken makes the comment that the university is full of people taking Alaska dollars and living out of state. I don't know how true that is, but I know that there's plenty of people out there who are doing it. That doesn't make it right. Let me see here. He used blood money, but he forgot war profits. Missed them. I mean, some of the talking points, and we've seen that here in the last couple weeks where we've interviewed some Democrats, and it's the blood money, it's the again, the war profits, the kind of the talking points there. And again, we have no direct connection to that, but it makes you feel dirty, when Alaska's taking blood money, even though it's just the market. I mean, we had nothing to do with it per se. So yeah. Deftly dodged the question on the president's policy, says Brian. Let's see. Bill says this guy's a smooth talker, but gives me the heebie-jeebies. Scrolling through here. He's a sleeper who wants to sound reasonable, but will twist your tail, says Robbie. Yeah. And Brian said at one point after he went on about some of that stuff, said that toasts him 100% for me. So, and I think that was when we were talking about education. So we'll see. I mean, I think the CON question also brought out some interesting things. You can see that they are very worried about the choice issue, and I don't know how we would wreck the schools with the CON, but I'm sure he's found there's some way in there to make it work. All right, we're coming up against it. Let's jump back into it. The Michael Duke Show continues. Jessica Wright is our guest. Up next, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Here we go.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Across the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com, where you will find the audio-only live stream and, of course, all the links to our social media sites where we simulcast the show every morning on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. And, of course, broadcasting on regular old terrestrial radio across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Welcome to the Michael Duke Show, Hour 2 of the big radio show. And today's program is being brought to you by your friends over there at Satellite West. You'll find them at satellitewest.com. Satellite West, of course, has all the technology that you need to keep connected inside the state of Alaska, regardless of where you are. If you want to send an email, or you want to check, you want to do an internet search, or you want to make a phone call, or you want to send a text message, on the top of Mount McKinley, Denali. They will do that for you. They will do that for you. Satellite West can get you hooked up no matter where you are in the state. They are your communication specialists. You can find out more about them at satellitewest.com. And we want to say thank you to them for sponsoring the program for this morning. All right, we are jumping back into it now. Our conversations with candidates. We just finished up with Cliff Groh, who's a Democratic candidate for House District 18. I imagine most of the listeners probably did not agree with Cliff's stances. But again, I always find it interesting to see where they stand on some things. Now we're moving up from Anchorage into the Mat-Su borough, and we are getting ready to talk to Jessica Wright. Jessica, who is running for House District 28 up in the Mat-Su area. And she joins us this morning to talk about her candidacy. And we're bringing her on the program, in fact, right now. And we welcome her to the show. Good morning, Jessica. How are you this morning?
Pretty good.
Good. Thanks for coming on board.
Well.
Good. Well, let's kick things off, Jessica, and start talking with you about who you are, where you came from. Let's get a little bit of a feel for what your story is, and folks want to hear more about you. So, who's Jessica Wright? Where did you come from, and what are you up to?
Okay, I'm Jessica Wright, running for State House District 28. I live in Alaska since 2009. I am a veteran's wife. I'm the mother of 5. I'm the editor of the magazine, and I'm the businesswoman. Our family moved here. I was born and raised in Taiwan. During my 20s, I came to the United States for my college education, and I got my political science degree. And at the time, I was thinking go to law school because most people got political science degree, went to law school, go to law school. Anyway, and
Right.
I met my husband, but I met my husband right after I graduated. So the first week. So the plan changed. We got married like soon after, like 2.5 months. And we had 5 kids, and we moved all over the country because of his job in the military. He was in the Air Force, by the way, when I met him.
Right.
And then we moved up here in 2009 because his job, his military assignment to Almador. And we have been here ever since, even after he retired.
Right.
The reason why I'm running because I just can't no longer sit around and watch our state going down to the socialist, the big government route. I just think it's wrong. It's bad for Alaska. Yeah.
Well, yeah, no, let's talk about that. I mean, was it one thing? Was it one specific thing? I like to ask the candidates, when exactly did you lose your mind to decide to become a candidate? I mean, was it one thing or was it a bunch of things that just kind of came together and hit you on it? What pushed you over the edge, so to speak?
Well, it's been ongoing because I have been heavily involved with my husband's campaign, and so I knew a lot about the political issues and climates. I just feel like, I support people in the Canada in the past, but I feel like I have lots to offer, and I need to do something besides, because I used to write articles to tell people, to run, to vote, all that stuff. But I just feel like I need to do more about this. I have so much to offer. I need to help the state government to steer to the right direction.
Right. Now, it's interesting because both you and your husband are currently running. You're running for the House seat in District 28, and Stephen, your husband, is running for the Senate district in District N. That, I don't know as that has ever happened in the state before. Does this create some interesting challenges if you both get elected with your family and everything else? How are you going to handle that?
It'd be nice we both get elected because I think we need lots of good people in the legislature. Because right now I feel like people have no voice. Because Alaska is a conservative state, but look at our state government; it's totally liberal. Our state's getting like California, Oregon, Washington.
Right.
So I just feel like it doesn't hurt if both of us are in the legislature, because my husband trying to, because he ran last term 2 years ago. He was the second place. So yeah, he just barely lost in the primary, but this time he want to try again to hopefully get a seat so he can give he had budget experience in the military. He did a budget for like 4 years. So, which I don't think anybody in the legislature had that budget experience like he does. Yeah, both are conservative. Yeah.
Now, I'm assuming that you've gone out and you've spoken to your constituents. You've gone out and knocked doors and met some of your voters and things like that. What are the things that they're talking about? I mean, I'm always fascinated by this because, that's really the heart and soul of your district. So are they, what's their issue when you talk to them? Do they talk about the PFD being the biggest issue, the size of government, inflation, abortion? What are the things that your constituents are really concerned about when you knock on their door? What's the first thing that they want to talk to you about?
Well, most of them talk about complain about Biden or Lisa McCuskey, but the PFD is definitely the biggest issue, because the PFD is our mineral rights, is our dividend to replace our mineral rights, so it shouldn't be taken away, which I totally agree.
Right. When you on your issues pages on your website, which is jessica4alaska.com, um, you mentioned that you are pro PFD. You're
Yes.
talking about Hammond's 50-50 formula, which is different than what we're using right now for the statutory formula. So
Yeah.
do you believe that we should be following the law and paying the statutory formula? Do you think we should go to a 50-50 of the POMV? What's your position on the permanent fund dividend as it sits right now?
Yeah, I think we need to repeal SB 26. We shouldn't go with the POMV, which is percentage market value, because what they're trying to do is reduce our dividends. So I think we need to go back to the Hammond's original POD plan, Hammond's 5 years average 50-50 plan, because according to the formula, we should get much bigger. Like this year, we should get like close to 6,000. I think over 5,500 if we use real Hammond's
Right.
formula, but we only get 3,200. Yeah, we got shortchanged.
So you would be a supporter of voting for a full statutory PFD and repealing SB 26 if you got
Yeah,
into the legislature.
definitely. Yeah. In addition, I want to restore 13,000 stolen POD. That the POD was stolen the last 7 years. I want to restore that to Alaskans. So that's
Right.
my first bill.
Well,
Yeah.
the money would definitely be. So where would you get that? Just out of curiosity, where would you get the additional $13,000 per person? I mean, that's a big amount of money. Don't get me wrong, and a big chunk of it still sits in the earnings reserve account. But where would you think that we should get that money for the back pay on the PFD?
I think we should. The money is over there. We have our PFD is so big. I think I'll just go to the reserve. Yeah, reserve account to to ask for, because it was belong to the people. So we need to. It's belong to me. We need to go back to the reserve account to get the money. I don't know.
Right.
I have to talk to my husband
and-
about the details. He's the PFD expert.
He's the PFD.
Yeah.
He's the PFD whiz, huh? Yeah, I mean, we could take
budget expert too. He knows budget inside out. He knows how to do the reduced budget. But anyway.
Yeah, because the money, a big chunk of that money is still sitting in the earnings reserve account. We could tap it out.
Yes.
Of course, that would
Yeah,
reduce the.
we have the money. It's not that government don't have money to pay our PFD. They just don't want to. They really use for the spending.
Right.
Yeah.
And that actually takes us to the last question before we go to break, and that is, the size and scope of the government in the state of Alaska. Is it too big? Is it too small? Is it just right? What do you think, Jessica Wright? What do you think is the state of the state's budget right now?
It's way too big. Our state budget is the highest in the nation per capita. This year, our state budget is $17 billion. You divide by 750,000, it's 23,650 per capita. It's 3 times state of Florida. Our government is way too big.
Right. And of course, that 17 billion includes both state and federal funds. And of course, we had a lot of money come in because of COVID and infrastructure and everything else. But still, do you have an idea of where you think we should be? I mean, as far as state budgets, I mean, do you have a target number that we should be spending just in like state funds on those kind of things?
I think we can cut down 20%, probably good. Yeah, go for at least 90%. We just come down gradually.
Well,
maybe
you're breaking
90%,
up.
80%.
Okay.
I mean,
So cut down to 80% then, like a 10, 20% cut in the overall budgets?
So, yeah.
All right. We got a bit of a delay
Yeah,
here. So we're gonna the time is here. We're gonna take a quick break. The time is here. We're got a little bit of a delay here, so we're gonna come back to this. Don't go anywhere. Jessica Wright is our guest. We're gonna continue with her here in just a moment. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We continue with Jessica Wright, a GOP candidate for House District 28. We'll return with more right after this.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
All right, we're in the commercial break right now. Jessica Wright is our guest. I think we've got an opportunity here. I think it's interesting since Mrs. Wright here was born and raised in Taiwan, and of course we hear all about now the threat and the push from the PRC and everybody else in threatening Taiwan. She may have a unique viewpoint on that, and I'd love to take that opportunity to just ask a couple quick questions. I mean, Jessica, growing up and being there right on the doorstep of mainland communist China, what was it? What was that like? I mean, what was that? It's got to be fearful living in the shadow of the largest standing army in the world. That can't be an easy thing to live with there in Taiwan.
No, not at all. I never feel any fear, but I do have some communist experience. Our family, my dad was fled from China during the Civil War. He was followed Chiang Kai-shek to Taiwan. And my family, his parents was the richest people in that region. Anyway, the communists took over in town. After communists took over, they got shot because they were the rich landlord.
Your grandparents?
Well, my grandparents, yeah, they were, because they were landlords. They had a whole bunch of land.
Yeah, landowners.
Yeah, they got shot. Yeah, so
Man.
but I just think, but when I live in Taiwan and growing up, I knew communism is wrong. I mean, you never bring out prosperity with practice communism. So that's why I want to run for office, because our government is socialists, which is a communist.
I think it's interesting speaking to people and families who fled communism and socialism specifically, because they're the ones that have had direct impact and had direct experience with it. And we get a lot of ivory tower liberals or educated folks, elites, who say, no, this is the way, the communism, the socialism, that's the way. And yet in every instance where it's been tried and true, we see the oppression, we see the violence, we see as you say, the murders and the purges that took place. And I always am encouraged by people who come from communist countries or communist areas and their families have fled those areas when they say, no, we've lived it. We know what it's like. It's not the utopia that you guys keep trying to tell us it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The sad thing is about that is that I think my dad's nephew, he not only they took their land, but he's illiterate. My brother told me my dad's nephew, I don't know what to call him. Anyway, he couldn't read and write because he got to send to field work all day. He didn't get any education, so he can't even write his own name.
That's crazy stuff. But you made it to America, and you've got a little bit of freedom here, and you want to help protect that freedom for everybody else.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Hold the line for us just a second, Jessica. We will be right back to you. Jessica Wright is our guest, candidate for State House in District 28. We're just over a minute before we return. I will going through some of the comments here to see if there's anything. Ken says she's an example of legal immigration working the right way. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the American success story, right? Coming here from another country and being able to participate and do things like run for office. That's an important stuff. Okay, going back through here. SB 26 isn't really a lot since they didn't repeal the statutory PFD. I mean, we should be repealing SB 26 because it's in conflict. That's what we should be doing, but we're not doing that right now. All right, well, we're going to get into some deeper issues of the budget and more. And I want to get back on this. Somebody said, "How can you ask where we're going to get the 13,000 PFD?" I'll talk about that here after we're done with Jessica. Here we go, the Michael Duke Show. All right, we're continuing. Jessica Wright is our guest. She is a GOP candidate for District 28, which is out here in the Matsu Valley. And we'd love to hear some more from her. So we're going to jump right back into it with her right now and talk about some of the issues surrounding the state budget. She just said that she thought that we could be cutting the state budget quite a bit, downwards of 20%, she says. And so let's talk about some of the specifics. I mean, education is a big thing. You've got 5 children, Jessica. And so, education is a big component of their life. And education is the second largest item in our budget. We continue to seem to throw ever increasing amounts of money at the education system, and yet scholastically we're falling in the bottom. I mean, we're 48th, 49th, 50th as far as scholastic achievement. So what is the answer in fixing the education system? Is it more money? Is it a fundamental change? Is it school choice? I mean, what are the things that you would do to help reduce the size and scope of education budgets, if that's the answer for you? What are you looking at in those regards?
Well, I think we need to go back to basic, hold a school student accountable that they need to be able to read and do the basic reading and write, the basic be able to pass reading or some kind of fundamental skills. When you go back to basics, so they can, we need to go back to the curriculum, make sure they can read and write and something like that.
The education, I mean, obviously,
and I also think.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think we need to give parents more choice. That I think I like the school. There are 2 schools I really like in our valley. Is career tech school that they teach us
trade school, like trades and vocational ed, things like that.
Another one is the the middle Alaska Middle College, like the high school can have a chance go to UAA, take UAA classes, so they can graduate early from college.
Right.
Like schools. Yeah, I think reading and writing is, I just feel like right now nobody take education seriously, and then teachers, staff on teacher, administration, teachers, they all more focused on social agenda, maybe political correct, but nobody really focus on be a good good teacher, dedicated teachers, or student need dedicate your studies. The more focus on you need to be political correct.
So more on reading, writing, and arithmetic than on social engineering or social skills or some kind of social justice or something like that. That they need just the basics of reading, writing, arithmetic, and basic reasoning and learning. Right?
Yeah, go back to the way it was before. We're there to learn. We're not like to get brainwashed. To be teach your kids need to be politically correct. That's
right.
It's wrong.
We've got, of course, our previous guest was talking about one of the things that would help education, in his opinion, is the return to a defined benefits program for the teachers. And of course, many of us who are opposing defined benefits are worried about the overall cost and the unfunded liabilities of those kind of things. And of course, we've also seen the administrative overhead and costs of education go up even and outstrip, even even the number of students that are, as the student enrollment has declined, we've seen the administrations grow. Are those areas that you would look at for ways to cut down into student and school budgets?
Yeah, I think we have too much we need to cut down the administration costs. We have so many districts. I mean, lots of budget we have on the education. Most of it go down to the administration, the teachers. It hardly goes actually direct to the students. Yeah, we
Right.
definitely cut those.
As far as we were talking about the PFD and the size and scope of budget, should the PFD formula be enshrined in the Constitution? I mean, because obviously the legislature can't follow the law. They don't want to follow the law. They don't want to change the law. So should we enshrine it in the Constitution so that they are required to follow the law?
Yeah, definitely. That's why my husband and I would try to, when we go out to talk to people, we say, hey, make sure you vote for state constitution convention and vote yes, because there's no way we can have all this unless all the new, lots of good people like us get elected to change to protect PFD. Otherwise, the best, safest way is to have the state constitutional convention to fix this, to enshrine the PFD law.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, enshrining and again, the Constitutional Convention, because as I said earlier, I don't think that there's the political will to pass constitutional amendments in the legislature. I mean, some
Yeah.
people may say that they're for enshrining the PFD in the Constitution. Some people may say they're for a spending cap in the Constitution, but the legislature just doesn't want to seem to move that ball at all. They want to just sit on. I mean, why would they? It would tie their hands. It would take power away from the legislature. Why would they
Yeah.
be interested in doing that?
Yeah, that's why I'm running, because I feel sorry for Alaskans. I feel that Alaskans have no voice. We elected people to represent us, but did they really represent us? No, they just represent themselves. They just go there, hang out with people in the, try to fit in a Juno in the environment and make sure
Right.
they're part of the group, wherever they are.
Right. Jessica Wright is our guest, candidate for State House, a GOP candidate for District 28 in the Wasilla area. Jessica, if I waved my magic wand today and said, boom, you're a legislator, what's the first thing that you're going to want to tackle as you get down to Juneau and start working in the legislature? What are going to be your priorities as you go on and start in the legislature?
I want to fix the PFD, repeal 26, restore the PFD to Hammond's 5 years average 50-50 plan, and to restore the stolen 13,000 PFD to the Alaskans. The reason why I want to do that, because I think Alaska economy was hurt because Governor Walker's veto, also state legislatures approach to take our PFD away. It hurts our private economy. Also, it basically destroyed our private economy. In 2017, our state economy was ranked last 50 place
Right.
in the nation, because we just look at Anchorage. There's not hardly any economic activities. We had no our private sector is really weak. The reason why is that because the business can tell our government is totally for the big government. They do not want to support the private economy. So I want to change that. Go back to before government Walker, because I was here since 2009. We were doing much, much better before Walker took our PFD. So I think when you go back, because my slogan is my goal is to make Alaska great again. To make Alaska great again, we need to have full PFD. We do not need to cut people's PFD income, and we need to protect the private economy. So
Well,
we were
We were already struggling because we were in a recession, and then the governor went ahead and cut the PFD, and that just exacerbated it. And then, of course, a year and a half later, we drop into a pandemic, which doesn't help as well. And so Alaska's still stumbling and bumbling around economically because they've continued to take thousands and thousands of hundreds of millions of dollars out of the private economy and instead trying to pump it into the public economy, into the government.
Yeah, and I can predict, and until we change our policy to pull private economy by giving people the full PhD, by reducing the government, by developing natural resources. Right now, I hardly see, because when I back then in 2009, I knew a whole bunch of people work on the stove, a whole bunch of men work on their husbands work on the stoves. Right now, I hardly seen anybody work on the stove. I mean, maybe one person, one or two. Anyway,
Right.
I just feel like our state become just a welfare state. Used to be job topiary. People come here
Right.
for jobs. Right now, people come here for welfare benefits. The only people doing well is the medical field because of the Medicaid expansion. Yeah, another thing we can cut the budget is to get rid of all the options, because our state's the only state they adopt all 26 options for the Medicaid. There's no other states have done that. Most states have none options, and our states had all of them, 26.
Right.
And yeah, the Medicaid really costs us money. Also, Medicaid right now, 40% of the population is Native people. They have their own federal insurance. They don't have to be on Medicaid.
Right.
Yeah, so we
Through,
can
yeah,
cut
through,
down the expense.
right. Through
That's our
BIA.
full baby there.
Right. Jessica Wright is our guest. We're coming down here to the last couple of minutes. Jessica, I guess one of the big questions is, would you be working with the Republican majority in the House if there was a majority in the House, or would you, as we've seen in the past, would you be working with the Democrats in that? I think I know the answer, but I'd like to get some solid answers from you. Would you stick with the Republicans, whether they're in the majority or the minority, or what would you do?
Yeah, I'm definitely will stick with Republican. Yeah, I can never go to Democrat side.
Yeah,
Yeah.
can't go to the Democrat.
It's opposite of what I believe. Yeah.
Right. It's a hard thing. So pro con, pro PFD, pro back pay PFD, pro cutting Medicaid, and bringing government budgets back down. Jessica Wright, I want to give you the last bite at the apple here. We got about 2 minutes, and so I wanted to give you the final say, give folks a final pitch as to why they should vote for Jessica Wright versus your opponents, and where people can find you, and are you doing any kind of events or meet and greets or whatever? I'll give you the floor here for the last couple minutes.
Yes, I'm Jessica Wright. I'm running for state senate. I'm a state house, District 28, and I'm for PFD, for Second Amendment, for small economy, for natural resource development. My website is jessicaforoalaska.com, and we do have the Halloween activity on the October 15th. Is a Halloween activity. Yeah, it's a fun activity for you guys to come. We sponsor.
Okay.
$10 get in, but we have the prizes for kids, and for adults has top 3 will win $200, $150. This is a fun activity for you guys to come.
Okay.
At Manaus Sports Center on October 15th from 6:30 to 8:30. Yeah.
Okay, so the Spooktacular Halloween party, October the 15th. Halloween costume contest for the kids. They win some prizes, and it's a good time to meet you, and your husband, I'm assuming, will be there as well.
Yeah,
And
we co-sponsored. Yeah.
Okay, co-sponsored it, so you guys are going to be there. Where's it going to be at on the 15th of October?
Manaus Sports Center.
Okay, the Menard Sports Center in Wasilla. If folks want to come out and meet Jessica, meet Stephen, and get a chance to enjoy yourselves, then the Spooktacular. Yep, Spooktacular Halloween party, October the 15th at the Menard Center. And of course, again, as I said before, jessicaforoalaska.com is her website. and we get a chance to chat with her. Jessica Wright, candidate for State House in District 28. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate it. We're going to hear from your husband tomorrow on the program.
Tomorrow, fine.
Okay. Yep. Tomorrow we're gonna. I think it's. Let me make sure that I said that right. Yep. Tomorrow, 7:05 a.m. Your husband's going to be on, and we'll be talking with him then tomorrow. So, Jessica Wright, thank you so much for coming on board. Appreciate it, and appreciate you bringing your perspective to us.
All right. Thanks.
All right, hold the line for just a second. All right, folks, we are up against the break. We've got one more segment coming up. I'm going to launch the phone lines, and we're going to open them up for you. Get your take on things from today. And this is your chance to, if you want to gripe about the first candidate or praise the second candidate, whatever you want to do. We're going to talk about that. That's up next. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
What is that?
Common sense.
Regularly heard on American radio.
Michael Duke Show.
Radio.
All right. We're in the chat room. Jessica Wright, still our guest. Brian says, Charter of Changes, ? I would love to go over the Charter of Changes with Jessica, but man, that's a full 10-minute segment right there just to go over each and every one of those. But I think based on her answers right now that she would be in favor of it. The biggest part of the Charter of Changes, Jessica, you don't know, that's 4 changes that we'd like to see happen in the state of Alaska to make Alaska better, to make Alaska great again, as you said earlier on. The biggest change, though, is the changes to the rules. We'd like to see the elimination of the binding caucus. We'd like to see the enforcement of the conflict of interest rules in the legislature, so that people who work in the oil industry can't vote on oil taxes, or people who work in the fishing industry can't vote on fishing changes. And we'd like to see the open meetings law apply to the legislature as it does to every other thing. So do you agree with those 3 changes?
Yeah. And talk about the open meeting. I talked to somebody from Florida. She said back then they had this called sunshine rule. Means every state because back then the parties was very corrupted. So they set this rule. I really like it because they said it shouldn't be closed-door meetings. All the meetings should be open meetings.
Right.
I agree.
Well,
I think I would submit a bill like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, the legislature requires every other public body in the state, whether you're a city council or a borough assembly, or even down to a little commission or road service area where there's just a half a dozen people that are represented, they require that all of those meetings be held in the open, that they're all publicly noticed open meetings, and yet they close their own doors and don't allow people behind the scenes. And then they come out and they make a vote where they've obviously done all the horse trading behind closed doors. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's a huge deal. And the legislature heretofore has not been interested in changing that. So we definitely think that that's a change that needs to be made. We'd also like to see the legislature meet on the road system. We'd like to see the legislative sessions to be held in Anchorage, Wasilla, Fairbanks, Delta. I don't care, somewhere on the road system, so that people can participate. Does that make sense to you? Oh, we lost Jessica. We just lost her feed. Okay. Well, I guess that puts us closer to phone calls then. Yeah, community councils are subject to Open Meetings Act. I mean, even places that really don't have access or utilize public funds are required to do that kind of stuff. It's mind-blowing, some of the things that go on there. All right, let me get squared away here. We're going to get the phone lines turned on and open them up so people can participate. And when I do this, I don't want it to blow you away here. And thanks for calling the call-in line. There we go. All right, phone lines are turned on. Phone lines are turned on, and we're ready to participate and talk with you and get things squared away. All right. No, I mean, I think it would be interesting. I think Jessica would bring a unique perspective to the legislature, especially since again, she's lived with family, had been lived on the doorstep of communism and totalitarianism, and has personal experience with her family members being affected by that. I think that is a see. I knew you could get the Charter of Changes in. Yeah, but I like to preface it with dude, it takes me a while to get warmed up to something like that. But I mean, literally, if we were going to do a Charter of Changes segment it would be an additional 10 minutes for every candidate. Some are more verbose than Jessica. So anyway, we'll do what we can do here. I do want to get back to this question that Warren asked earlier, and I'm going to get to that when we jump back onto the air. He asked a question about how can you ask. He said, how can you ask where we're going to get back the $13,000 from the PFD? Doesn't everyone want their property or money back? This is why most in Juneau don't want the people to vote on it. There's a reason why I asked that, and I'll get to that here in a second, Warren, and we'll talk about that. How about that? We'll get to that, and we'll do that. This is why people from other perspectives are more appropriate than candidates like Groh, said Jeannie. I mean, I think that there's validity in both types of candidates, but yes, I think that those that have lived under the regimes that we've been talking about and have seen the effects of larger statist governments, they definitely bring a perspective that I want in my legislature for sure. Simply because they've seen it and they understand it, and they understand, as gracious and magnanimous as people want to think that larger governments would be to take care of the people, it's a double-edged sword. And we've seen that in history. I mean, that's not just me talking, that's history talking. And bringing people in who have seen that firsthand definitely, I think, is good for us as a people. We need to have that kind of perspective. All right, we got to jump into this and kick things off. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Like and share the show. Let's get more people involved. We can only do that if you share and invite people. Here we go. All right, we're back. One final segment of the show today. We got about, 10, 11 minutes to chat with you, to see what you have to say. And I have opened up the phone lines for anybody that would like to sound off this morning. Phone number to call, as always, is 907-433-3150. 907-433-3150. We'd love to hear from you and see what you have to say about any of the candidates or the topics or the things that we brought up today. We'd love to hear from you. Please feel free to give us a call in this final segment of the show. I like to use it a little bit as a review of the candidates that have been on today and what you liked and what you didn't like. I think that's good. During the questions of Jessica, I got a comment in the chat room, which I wanted to address because I didn't have time with Jessica on to address it. But Warren in the chat room asks, because I was talking with Jessica about the PFD, she said she wanted to pay the PFD back, which I said, great. Okay, so where does that money come from? Just tell me where that money comes from. So Warren says, Michael Dukes, how can you ask where we're going to get the back $13,000 for the back PFD? Doesn't everyone want their property or money back when it's been stolen? This is why most people in Juneau don't want the people to vote on it. Okay, I understand what you're saying, Warren. Here's why I asked. Because it's important to me that if we're going to offer an idea, we're going to offer something, we've got to know how it's going to be paid for. This is what Brad and I were talking about earlier in the week when we were talking about half a plan, right? These candidates have all these great and broad amorphous ideas about how we're going to do things. And then they're like, but they never tell you how you're going to pay for it. Now, where would we get the back $13,000 that's been taken from every man, woman, and child in the state? Well, the majority of that money still resides in the earnings reserve account. And that's what I said to her. And she said it would come from the earnings reserve account if, that's where she would like to see it come from, which I think is a good answer. But I think we have to ask those questions. We can't just say, well, because we want something, it'll just happen because we want it. That's not how it works. We've got to have a plan for if we want X, how are we going to fund X? Does that mean we have to take the money from somewhere else? Does it mean it comes out of a fund? Does it mean we have to pay for it through taxes? Does it mean we have to, do we have to cut government down to fit that? I mean, we need to know. We can't just, put a blind eye on and say, because, man, we really want that money. What are we going to do with it? How are we going to get it? That's got to be a question. We must be asking ourselves these questions all the time. We can't shy away from them. So I think it was a good question to ask, and I think she had a good answer. The answer is it came out of the earnings reserve account where the lion's share of that money still sits. So good answer to what I thought was a good question. Again, the tone of Warren's question to me is, how can you ask that? Well, because I think it's a valid question. If you want something from government, whether it's a full PFD or the back pay or some other kind of program, how are you going to pay for it? I think that's how you need to do it. All right, let's go back to the phones and see what you guys have to say. 907-433-3150 over here. Good morning. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
My name's Christine, and I'm down on Kenai Peninsula.
Good morning, Christine. What is on your mind this morning?
I wanted to let anybody listening know that down here we're going to gather together to watch a debate about convention. Yes. We're going to do this tomorrow night, Thursday, at 7. The debate starts about 7, but we're going to gather together about 6 o'clock, have some pizza, and get some information about convention, yes. And then we're going to watch the debate. And then we're going to discuss it among ourselves. This is going to happen tomorrow night, Thursday, the 29th of September, at Paradiso's Restaurant in Kenai.
Okay. Paradiso's, is that how it's pronounced? Because I always pronounce it Paradiso's Restaurant. But so it's Paradiso's Restaurant.
Most of us pronounce it Paradiso's. Okay. I don't know how it's pronounced.
Good. Okay. I just want to make sure that I'm on the same page with you guys. So tomorrow night, 6 p.m., you're going to start. The debate starts at 7. You're going to watch it, and then you're going to discuss it afterwards.
Yeah, among ourselves. If anybody has questions, we're going to bat that around, and then we're gonna do that tomorrow night, Thursday, at Paradiso's in Kenai.
Okay.
We're going to have some pizza. There'll be some pizza for a while. And anybody who's interested in learning more about the convention, yes, should be there.
Okay. All right. Tomorrow night, 6 p.m., Paradiso's in Kenai. Pizza and debate. Boy, that sounds delicious. Both of them sound delicious. So that should be an interesting thing. All right. Yeah. Well, thank you, Christine. Appreciate you calling in and joining us this morning.
No problem. Thank you.
All right. Number to call if you want to sound off is 907-433-3150, 907-433-3150. The debate that Christine was talking about is going to be a debate which is going to be live streamed. So if you're not down on the peninsula and you want to watch it, you can do it in person at the Wendy Williamson Auditorium in Anchorage. Or you can watch the live stream on the Facebook page for Alaska Public Media, which is facebook.com/Alaska Public. They're going to be broadcasting it and live streaming it on the web. Again, doors open at 6:30. The debate starts at 7. The debate is going to be between two sides, the pro-con and the anti-con side. Debating the pro-convention side is going to be Bob Byrd, who's the chairman of the Alaska Independence Party. He also hosts a talk radio show down there on the Kenai as well. And former Lieutenant Governor Lauren Lehman is going to be on the pro side as well. Representing the anti-con side are going to be Joel Hall, president of the AFL-CIO, and Matt Shuckero, who is the owner of Fathom Strategic Communications and also former press secretary in the Dunleavy administration. So this should be a very interesting debate. Now, here's something that I've been saying about this for quite a while, but you can see this. As I mentioned yesterday, the ADN had a very in-depth article about the Constitutional Convention, talked about both sides. You could see some, I was reading between the lines as to some of the condescension that I think the writer was feeling for the pro-con side. But all you had to do, that article has a tremendous breakdown on the people that are supporting both the pro and the con side, and really the monies. Because to me, if you look at the money that, if I look at a ballot measure or a proposition or some kind of political position, I look at the people who are supporting it, both financially and with their time and effort. And when I look at the group who is supporting the anti-constitutional convention, it pretty much tells me why I should be in favor of a constitutional convention. Well, you've got the 1630 Project from Washington, the 1630 Fund, which is even the New York Times calls it a far left progressive group for donations. They have donated $500,000 of the nearly $1 million that has been raised by the anti-con group called Defend Our Constitution. They've donated $500,000. And then you've got the unions, the IBEW, the teachers unions, the state employees unions. They've all donated hundreds and fifties, thousands, 100,000, 100. That's where all those monies are coming. The majority of these monies are coming from labor unions and dark money groups like the 1630 Fund, and people who are obviously worried about the gravy train stopping. And the public coffer gravy train. That's why you have somebody like Joel Hall, who is with the AFL-CIO and the labor unions. They're very worried about it. So of course they want that to stop. And all you had to do, quite honestly, when you look at this, Defend Our Constitution, on all the people who are part of the power structure of this group. I've gone through this before, but I'll go through it again. Kathy Giesel is a co-chair. Joel Hall, we just mentioned. John Coghill is a co-chair. Bruce Patello, Bryce Edgmond, Luke Hopkins for you folks in Fairbanks, Bill Corbis, Gail Schubert. These are just the officers of the executive committee. And then again, all the people and the names that you know in the coalition members that are names that you probably recognize that quite possibly are in direct contravention with what your beliefs are. People like, Andrew Halcrow, Beth Kurtula, Calvin Schregi. I'm just scrolling through. There's lots of names here. Chuck Gray, Jim Clark, former chief of staff, that is in there. Justin Ruffridge is a member of the group. He's running for office down on the peninsula. Again, Matthew Shuckrow's names, Marna Sanford. I'm just looking at all these names. These are people that I mostly disagree with from a political, and not necessarily politics in specifics, but politics in general. These are people who mostly believe that the answer to most of the problems out there is a bigger, stronger, bolder government. That's who they are. Zach Fields. Vince Beltrami. I look at these names and I go, well, these are people that I would just completely disagree with on most things. If they are strongly supporting this, then maybe that's another reason for me to say I don't believe in it. I don't support it. I shouldn't be. I should be instead in direct opposition with them. Anyway, we got to go. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Have a good day. Well, again, I blew past the end of the hour. Irritating. All right, my friends. Well, all you have to do for your own benefit is go over and look at the names that are on this. I'm going to post this up in the chat room right now. Here's the chat room. You can go in there and take a look at it. Just follow the money. Look at all these people. It's look at all these people. It's astonishing. That should tell you right there what's going on. Brian says, to be fair, you gave her the answer. Not to say she wouldn't have come up with the same answer, but okay, maybe I led her down the road a little bit, but I'm looking for an answer. Maybe I've done that before. Maybe I'll do it again. I don't know. Just trying to put everything on the table there. All right, guys, we're out of time. We got to go. Thanks for coming in and joining us. The Michael Duke Show. Tomorrow's another day. Tomorrow, it's going to be Rosalind Casey and Stephen Wright, who is Jessica Wright's husband. So we'll have that conversation tomorrow. Will this list be online as well? Christine, I just put it up above you there in the chat room. You can take a look at it. You can follow that link, and you can read about all the members and who supported it and all the different organizations that support it. The Alaska Center. Oof. Pro-Choice Coalition, Juneau. Yeah. All right. The city of what? The Fairbanks Greater Chamber of Commerce. Yeah. The city and borough of Juneau. They're actually, wow. Okay. Well, there you go. All right, folks, we got to go. Thanks for coming in and joining us, The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We will see you guys tomorrow. Have a great day.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.
Goodbye.